Okay, welcome Debbie Solaris to the podcast. Debbie is a um, Akashic reader, a galactic historian, ET contactee, and starseed intuitive. And happy to have her on to talk a bit about her experiences and what we can share in the current times. And um, welcome on, Debbie. And can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on your show. It's great to meet you. And I know you're in Arizona and I'm in Colorado, so we're not that far from each other. So that's really
Mhm.
always pretty awesome. So just a little bit about myself. I was actually kind of a latecomer to the spiritual movement or the metaphysical, community. So I didn't really begin my journey until just about a little over 10 years ago. Um, I think, you and I are going to talk about my ET contact experience for sure. But before that, I am a Navy veteran, so I spent 6 years in the Navy, and I worked quite a few years in environmental health, which is a very scientific field. So I basically had a very kind of ordinary upbringing. I didn't really get into this until my ET contact experience. So part of what I do is I look at the Akashic records, but I look at beyond the Earth records. So I think that what sets me apart from maybe other Akashic readers out there, where I look at the galactic history. So I look at historical events and star lineages that came from systems well beyond Earth. And because we're all, ancient souls, we've all had, a multitude of lifetimes and journeys getting here to Earth. Especially in this timeline, a lot of us are star seeds, and we probably had incarnations in many different systems. So that's a big bulk of what I do. So, I do readings here and there still, but on a very limited basis because now I've become more of a public figure. I think a lot of people might have seen me interviewed on Gaia TV as well as many other platforms, so that's pretty much where I'm at. And I consider myself also a teacher. Like I love to teach about galactic history and how to access the records and how to be successful with it. And also, how to interpret, maybe what star systems, the individual might be connected with. So, so there's that.
I think recently, yeah, what caught my eye a little while ago is you had done this webinar on starseeds finding love, and
Hmm.
that had been a pressing issue. It seemed to hit with a lot of people, especially me, just going through the world, feeling that sense of isolation, that alienation, that kind of like, and I've seen when you speak about it too, you just felt apart, you knew a little bit, you caught on to the game early, but you weren't, it kind of all hit you at once. So
Hmm.
I guess how we could structure the argument, the conversation is basically just how can we navigate these times, like these way showers, these star seeds that have this certain sensitivity, this psychic nature. They've been on board with this wave for a while now,
Hmm.
um, while the world is kind of, losing its mind.
Yeah, totally.
Um,
It's
because I
like we're
think,
the stabilizers in,
yeah,
this insane clown posse that we call, the 3D Matrix.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I think, for star seeds, a lot of us um, have chosen to be here. So we're souls that have had a multitude of lifetimes in other systems, so we didn't originate from Earth, in other words. And the definition of a star seed is just a soul that's currently having an Earth incarnation, but their soul originated in a different star system or a different galaxy or a different reality. And so Dolores Cannon, I'm a big fan of Dolores Cannon. So I've read a lot of her books, but the book that I think impacted me the most was called The Three Waves of Volunteers in New Earth, because she talks about all of these starseed souls that were starting to incarnate on Earth after World War II. And so star seeds will come here. So a lot of us were starting to trickle in like after World War II. So like around 1946, 1947. And so the first wave, which I'm a part of the first wave, so I'm an oldster,
Hmm.
so um, so we were starting to trickle in, and we're coming in during a time like in the 40s and 50s and 60s where there was a lot of conformity and a lot of programming. So it took the first waivers a while to wake up, but we always had this sense that I don't feel a part of this reality. I don't think I come from here. I think I'm different. So we had it really difficult. I think the second waivers, which is the people that were born in the 70s, maybe late 60s, 70s, and 80s. And then, the third waivers had a little bit easier because, as the consciousness expanded, this information was starting to become more available. But for a lot of us, it's been a long, hard journey, getting to awakening, so you mentioned, my webinar on relationships. I felt inspired to do that because of my own struggles with relationships, particularly during my most of my early adulthood. I actually was single for 20 years. I mean, I was,
Hmm.
out there, never could understand why guys didn't like me, why I couldn't attract, a good relationship. And then I ended up in a very abusive marriage. It was just I got desperate and just married the first person that wanted to have a relationship with me. And he turned out to be very abusive and, pretty much an addict. He was addicted uh, to alcohol, gambling, and drugs, pretty much. And so that marriage didn't last very long. And so, fortunately, because it
Hmm.
became physically abusive. So
Yeah.
I left that marriage and I just went through this deep dive of healing myself. I just swore to myself I was never going to have another experience like that. So I did for 2 years I didn't date at all. I just deep dived into doing a lot of shadow work around, why was I attracting, these really unhealthy relationships. And then eventually I did meet my now husband. He and I have been together 22 years. And he's a star seed too. And we kind of grew in the star seed thing together. So when we first both met, neither one of us were awakened, but I always knew there was something different about him. Like he was really into the paranormal and into ETs, and I mean, way before I was, So,
Yeah.
so he was kind of a catalyst to my awakening. So I think sometimes, we end up with the right people, and I had to go through this whole process of manifesting what I wanted to create as far as relationships. So that's a big part of what I teach in the webinar. And this webinar is accessible to anybody. If they go on my website and they go on the training page, they can just sign up for it
Okay.
because it's now been recorded. So folks can, certainly still access it. There's a small charge, but it's not super expensive or anything, and it's
Yeah.
like over 3 hours of really good information. So it's just
Yeah.
mainly, I think, based on my journey and struggles I had, and um, and I see with a lot of my clients that are star seeds are having the same struggles because we are different. We're vibrating at a higher rate. So we're not a vibrational match for a lot of the normies, if you want to call it that,
Yeah.
that are on the planet.
Yeah.
So how do we meet other star seeds,
Yeah. And I purchased this webinar and I really liked it. I got a lot out of it for those that are listening. And it was just really good to hear someone. Sometimes it's just good to hear someone also that just appreciates the struggle of it and you're not crazy. You're like it's like you're shouting into the void about, hey, I need this quality. I need these qualities, X, Y, Z. And it's like we're vibrating at a higher rate. but
Yeah.
you do sound like a crazy person, or you just sound, oh, you're so arrogant, or you think you're holier than thou.
Or you got your standards are too high,
Yeah,
everyone
exactly.
don't want
So,
it. Yeah.
but it seems like a quality that's hard to describe. Like it's not
Hmm.
easy to put into words. So it's like
Yeah.
how the way I would somewhat define it is someone who has like an expanded heart space, who's been through a lot of the inner work, who's been through a lot of heartbreak and loss and has a certain spiritual awareness and self-awareness, and the rate at which their soul, like if you would think of their soul as like some like a sort of moving vortex of energy,
Hmm.
evolving constantly, going through the
Hmm.
world, doing transmuting, that syncs up to yours like in a very close way. But
Hmm.
um and I think also the ability to do the inner work parallel, like walking side by
Hmm.
side. But I don't know how you, if there are any qualities you would add to that in
Hmm.
what these star seeds are searching for. That seems
Hmm.
to be really hard to find in these times.
Well, I think it's,
Yeah.
you have to be equally yoked. And, even the Bible talks about that, in marriage, that you want to be with a partner that's aligned with the same or similar missions. Because otherwise you're just going to fall apart. It's just, so not necessarily that, oh, you got to be exactly the same. I think, we're all different people, but I would say definitely being aligned with an overall mission to be of service to humanity is a key factor. And then having an interest in things beyond the physical is another really key factor. I think that's something that I think starseeds really struggle with because, we just have these expansive minds. We like to talk about spirituality and about ETs and about metaphysics and the paranormal, and most people out there aren't into that. It's like we
Yeah.
talk and they're like zoning out, because they don't know what we're talking about. So it's like things like that I think a lot of my starseed clients are looking for. They're looking for somebody that can be a true partner, that could be, and somebody that's healthy, that's done the inner work, like you were mentioning, that is interested in improving themselves, is not wanting to fall into codependent or, dysfunctional type of behaviors. So, I mean, that's kind of a tall order in today's world,
Yeah.
because there's so many damaged people out there.
Yeah. And it seems like such a repetitive game if you literally even have remembrance
Yeah,
of past lives.
yeah,
It's just like a very silly game at some point. But the only way through it is through it, healing, abandonment wounds, betrayal wounds, all that stuff. But if you're just
yeah.
like ready for the real thing and you're not ready to like be in a marriage that's like half good or mostly good, or I'm
Hmm.
gonna kind of grunt and groan my way through it, that maybe like my more like the baby boomers, parents' generation, they're more like all about just choose and go, never ever get divorced.
Totally.
We're in a different kind of vibration now.
Hmm.
So I guess I wanted to address like that the quality that today is hard to describe. I think for a lot of people, this more global empathy is coming online.
Hmm.
Like we're becoming more aware of how we transmute for the world.
Hmm.
And
Totally.
it literally does feel like the weight of the world coming through your body like an avalanche.
Hmm.
So maybe you could just speak to some of these people that are really suffering right now and just feeling the weight of the world, even just sitting in their own home. They're
Yeah,
feeling the
gotcha.
craziness, they're feeling the massive temper tantrum of humanity, the pain, the grief.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, for those folks, I think there's a lot of folks right now that are going through massive, massive changes, and it's ultimately for the highest good. But sometimes, because we're deep into it, we have a hard time seeing it. And I can speak to this personally because I went through my own health journey where it just seemed like I was getting hit with one health issue after another, and it was just like, what the heck is going on? With me, it was mostly health related, but for other people, it might be relationships or their finances or family issues, or so it could be a number of different things, or just really upset about the just what's going on in the world in general, just all the suffering, So I would say to that the best way to get out of that dark night of the soul, if you want to call it that, is to decide right then and there that you're going to be part of the change. I mean, I know that sounds like something that Gandhi has said,
Hmm.
but it really is very applicable, It's and that's pretty much what I did to get out of my funk was I decided, I was going to be volunteering my time as part of an animal assisted therapy team, So I did this for 6 years with my therapy cat, which people can read about on my website. There's a whole section kind of devoted because I consider her my first teacher. So I still keep a section on my website that's devoted to the work I did as an animal assisted therapy team. Um, but I think, the best way to break out of that funk is to start deciding that you're going to be in service to humanity, you know. And it could be as little or as simple as you want it, or as grandiose as you want it, it's, there's nothing stopping you from creating how you're going to be of service, And this is something I talk about a lot with my Akashic clients, So what's your mission? What is it that brings you passion? How can you take your skill sets and your gifts and utilize that to help humanity, to help, people, whether they're people in your community or your clients or just the grand, mass consciousness, and, people can choose different ways of doing that. It doesn't have necessarily have to be, being a volunteer, but I have some people that are truth tellers, they have podcasts and that's their way of being of service is to share information, So it could be something like that. Or you could do what I did, which was, volunteering your time, with, different charitable organizations, throughout the community. I did that for 6 years, so I think that's the best way to get out of yourself is like, hey, even as small as it is, um, I'm going to do this because it's making a difference, And so then you're creating this higher vibrational state within your auric field. And a lot of star seeds don't realize this, but our auric fields can affect, or our vibrational rate can affect the periphery of a 50-mile radius around us. So that starts shifting things. Just to give you an example of how simple it could be, like my husband, for instance, he decided for a while that he was going to volunteer at the food bank. And all he did was just stocking food and putting food boxes together. But even that, I think, really shifted his vibration. And he said his heart chakra just opened and things kind of shifted for him at that point. I know things definitely shifted for me when I decided I was going to think about others and not just think about my own misery, so I think
Yeah.
that that's a big key factor, and also keeping your vibration high. It's really hard when we're living in this toxic reality where there's so much toxic things on the internet, and the TV shows have a lot of programming, and
Hmm.
music is not very high vibrational, but we can do things every day to raise our vibration. I mean, even simple as meditating every day or taking a walk in nature or doing some grounding exercises or, just listening to high vibrational music, so there's that as well.
Can I ask, your spiritual awakening, what was the catalyzing event?
Yeah, great question. Um, I always say I'm a late bloomer because I didn't really become awakened until I was 1 month before I turned 50. I mean, I was late in the game. I'm 62 now, um, basically what happened back then was I was still working my 3D job, and it was 2012. And I think a lot of things were happening in 2012 spiritually. I think it was kind of a big catalyst year for a lot of star seeds, along with 2020. I think that was another big catalyst year. But basically, I was starting to notice that, wow, there's a lot going on and it's not good. There's a lot of suffering on this planet. And our political system just seems very unstable. And now people are talking about the Mayan calendar and how that's going to end things. And so I was starting to get a little worried. And so I said this, I sent, I had a sleepless night one night. So I earnestly prayed to all of the higher dimensional beings I can think of. So at that time I wasn't really awakened, so I was thinking about ascended masters or angels or Mother Mary, because I was brought up Catholic. So I was reaching out to those beings, and then at the last minute I thought, I'm going to extend this prayer out to the galactic brothers and sisters. I don't even know why I even said that. It's just like, what was I thinking? And basically I was praying for peace on earth. I was praying for suffering to end on the planet, for the abuse of our environment to be stopped, and that people and animals can be relieved of their suffering. And so I sent this prayer out, and then, next morning went back to work, things were normal. And then 2 weeks later, I went to sleep as normal. And when I came to, I was in this different reality. I mean, it was kind of like a near-death experience without dying, where you're in this higher dimensional state. And I was looking around and it looked like a starship. I was just like, wow, this is really different. And the reason why I knew it wasn't a dream was because things in the higher dimensions are crystal clear. Like when you're having a dream, even a lucid dream, things are kind of fuzzy or it has this kind of dreamlike quality to it. This was very, very real. I mean, it was like, the details were really sharp, the colors were brilliant, so I knew I was in a different reality. And as I was looking around, I realized I was on board a starship. And I interacted initially with some beings that were definitely extraterrestrial. I mean, never seen beings like that before. I was used to reading, I read some articles on gray aliens and on tall whites. And so I had a general idea about ETs, but these ETs didn't look like that. So they were kind of short and had larger heads and larger eyes, but I could tell immediately they weren't gray aliens. Their vibration alone was so loving and so high vibrational that I knew they weren't grays. So I was thinking of questions to ask them. And as I was thinking of the questions, they were answering me in telepathy. So I knew that, okay, these are some high vibrational beings. And they told me they were Arcturians. So that was how I found out that my soul originated from Arcturus. That I was part of their soul family, that I had chosen as a soul. This is what they told me, that I had chosen as a soul to volunteer on Earth to help with the ascension process of Earth, but that I was so heavily programmed that I forgot my mission, that I forgot who I was. And so when I said my prayer, they actually heard the prayer. Oh, it's amazing that they heard the prayer, but they figured at that point I was ready. I think it was that, and also all the years I spent, volunteering. So ETs, they don't want to interact with people that are just wanting to interact with them because it feeds their ego or because they're a looky-loo. They just want, to have a cool story to tell, like, oh yeah, I had this contact with ETs. They want to interact with humans and star seeds that are willing to help others, that are willing to be of service. So that's a key component for them, as far as contact. Um, and there's various reasons why ETs will contact humans. I mean, sometimes it's a soul contract, or maybe they volunteered to be part of the hybridization program. So there's various reasons. But in my case, it was just an activation, it was, time for me to be activated on my mission. So I spent quite a bit of time on this ship. It felt like I was there for a long time, and they were answering my questions. And then I had the opportunity to explore the ship, and I interacted with what I found out later was Pleiadian beings. And these Pleiadians, when you see them in person, I mean, the Arcturians were amazing. I mean, when you encounter these beings, they're just not like anything we see here on Earth. I mean, their vibrations are so high. They're beautiful. I mean, it's just amazing, to
Mm.
interact with these beings. It's almost shocking, because you don't see Earth humans that look like that. Um, so then, I woke up and I was back in my bed, so I was, this happened during dream time. And then I had a second experience later that year in December 2012 with the same ship, same beings. The visit was a little shorter. It was more personal. Like there was the Pleiadian being that I mostly interacted with was sharing information about key people in my life, just in my family and stuff like that. And then the visit ended. But I knew even after the first visit in May that I was not the same. Like when I woke up, I knew that, okay, I know what's going on. I'm awakened, my life is not going to be the same from here. And but then I honestly didn't share my story, for a couple of years. So at first I thought maybe I was going crazy, and but I decided, I need to find out more. So I got my hands on any book. As you can see, I have a lot of books in my office,
Mhm.
but I read a ton of books about all aspects of spirituality. I took a lot of spiritual classes. And I was doing a lot of research online, just trying to figure out what the heck is going on, because it was like my consciousness really expanded and my abilities expanded, So I was seeing auras, I was picking up information, I was downloading galactic information. So it was a lot going on with me. And I was having experiences, like I was seeing UFOs all the time, and even telepathically communicating with beings on these UFOs, and going on interdimensional travels. And I mean, it was just crazy. So those 2 years was kind of like this massive spiritual upgrading where, I was like a spiritual sponge. I was just taking in as much information as I could and really trying to develop my skills. I kind of came upon doing Akashic readings by happenstance. I wasn't really initially setting out to be an Akashic reader. But I didn't know where all this information, because I was getting like downloads of galactic history and downloads of information about star systems and star races. And so I was just kind of like, well, where's this coming from? So I took some Reiki courses in my, local hometown here. I live in Castle Rock, which is just south of Denver, and Colorado. We got a lot going on here in Colorado. I mean, spiritually speaking, we have a thriving spiritual community here. So, which is very fortunate for me, especially, but for a lot of us. But so I was taking these Reiki classes, and I was talking to my Reiki teacher about my experiences. And she said, well, sounds like you're getting information from the Akashic Records. And I was like, oh, what is that? I don't even know what that is. And so she explained it to me and says, I teach Akashic Records reading, you can take my course. So I was like, heck yeah, it's local, I mean, it's only, you know, 5 minutes from where I lived. So
Mhm.
yeah, sign me up. So I that's kind of how I started doing Akashic readings, because I realized I was good at it. Like I was tapping in. I was really able to get information very easily. And so after that, I was invited to speak at a paranormal group talking about my ET contact experience, and it was part of a like an ET contactee panel. So there was other people on the panel, but I guess people liked my story so much that I got invited to talk about galactic history at the University of Colorado in Boulder,
Mhm.
so it's just like all of a sudden, and then I was invited to talk at, different, locations throughout the Front Range of Colorado, and that's how people started to get to know me. And at this time, I was still doing readings. I was doing them professionally, but I was kind of doing them kind of like as a side gig because I was still working my regular job. So I worked for the health department for a lot of years.
Okay.
You know, but um, but then I was starting to get known as, this local galactic historian, Akashic reader person, and eventually in 2019, I retired from my job. And then in 2020, that was when I was invited to be on Gaia TV for the first time. So,
So
so then things kind of blew up from
yeah,
there.
yeah. So that's a fast progression.
Yeah.
What would you say were those first 2 years very hard on you? Like, was it
Oh, yeah.
what was where did you turn when you felt like you had no one in that on those crazy spiritual upgrades?
Yeah. I honestly didn't talk about it that much with anybody, maybe my husband a little bit, but
Mhm.
I think he thought I was making it up at first, or he didn't even believe I had an experience.
Yeah.
And now, I think he believes it because I mean, it's been a few years, um, but yeah, I thought I went through a massive depression
Mhm.
after my ET contact experiences because it's kind of like when you're going through like a near-death experience where you're exposed to the highest dimensions or the higher dimensions, and then you're being told, oh, you have to go back, and then you're
Yeah.
back in the 3D, and when you're in the higher dimensions, it's like everything is so energized. It's like you just feel really good. So then going back to the 3D, it's like wah, wah, wah. Everything is like, boring and, dull and uninteresting. So I went through a massive depression for, quite a few months, after, I had those experiences. And then I was having a lot of health issues. So it wasn't like an easy journey. It wasn't like,
Mhm.
oh, I woke up and okay, now all my gifts are online and I'm ready to rock and roll. I mean, I had to go through this whole process of going through the dark night of the soul and trying to climb out of that and do the
Yeah,
inner thing and the work.
it's
So,
almost like it's purging you, like all that
mhm.
excess baggage needs to get
Oh,
purged of every.
totally. And it's kind of like for some of us, it's a rapid spiritual evolution, where it's just like you go through like maybe even lifetimes of karma and trauma and you're processing through all of it. So
Mhm.
it can get really intense for
And
sure.
you describe it as more real than real, like more real than this reality.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Would and I resonate with that because it's like this reality sometimes feels like it's almost like playing pretend or like Monopoly money. Like it's not really, it doesn't encapsulate my essence. I can't
Mm.
connect with another human, another soul as much.
Yeah,
There's so much density. And I know
yeah,
we choose that, but it is somewhat a scary, dark world that we chose
it
to be in.
is. It's the Arcturians, when I was on board the ship, told me that it's an illusion. And I didn't understand what they meant by that at first because I thought, well, gosh, I could touch everything, everything seems pretty real. But yeah, it is an illusion. It's not a real, it's kind of a false matrix construct.
Would
It's
you
not
call it
real.
a simulation, like people
Yeah,
say?
totally. Yeah,
Okay.
totally.
But
Yeah.
did our higher selves create it?
Yeah, I think
We
so.
created the game.
hmm
There's
We chose
not
to be
this
part of it. And
there's not this idea where it's watched over by these nefarious entities and all that. I mean,
oh,
maybe
there's
that's
there's
just as
that part too. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely I think there's,
Yeah.
the beings that are playing the dark side, and then there's
Yeah.
us that are playing the light side, and it's kind of like a
But it
chess game,
but we still somewhat all created it with our higher selves
Totally.
in a
Yeah,
way,
totally.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, that's another thing I wanted because I've seen experiences and felt experiences with that, like the galactic history, the wars with
Hmm.
Lyra, and I forgot what it was with, but I personally have always had this feeling like I'm an orphan, like not
Hmm.
just on Earth, but like at a bigger level. Like I
Hmm.
always had that feeling like I was just this awkward foreigner in every room I
Hmm.
ever entered in my whole life.
Yeah.
But not just that, but like as the awakening progressed and I like got more aware, it was also like the multidimensionality coming online. Like I still
Hmm.
felt, wow, like maybe even at the galactic. And then I started to learn about, all right, some planets have been blown up. There's been galactic wars. There's been entire
Hmm.
civilizations displaced. I was like, wow, that orphan feeling, it's like a really deep pain. It's like a really
Yeah.
deep homesickness. So maybe you could just speak to that a little bit because I think you have a similar
Yeah.
knowing and
Yeah. No, I
yeah.
did. So when I had my first spontaneous past life regression, it took me immediately to my lifetime in Lyra. And I was actually not even Lyran. I was a Arcturian ambassador, serving in Lyra. And I think this is, all kind of like traumas and trauma signatures that I think a lot of us humans go through because we're replaying some of the old original trauma from Lyra. So
Mhm,
for those of your listeners that don't know, about Lyra, it was the original home of human consciousness. So the human races were first developed in Lyra, and they had this really thriving civilization that was, like paradise planets. It was just beautiful, and they lived in peace and harmony for thousands of years until the Draconians, which were the Dracos or the reptilians that lived in Draco, decided they wanted to conquer that system, because they saw, oh, they got a lot of resources, so they decided to attack Lyra, and it started this humongous war. And this was the most catastrophic event that's ever happened in our universe, where entire planets were destroyed, 50 million Lyrans lost their lives. Some of the Lyrans escaped, but they barely escaped, they couldn't defend themselves, so it was pretty terrible. And when I went through, my I guess remembrance of my lifetime there, because I was killed, during that lifetime, it was traumatic. I mean, just seeing what happened,
mhm.
was so traumatic that I cried for months afterwards. I was so depressed. I had to process through that trauma. I didn't know how to. So eventually, I did do some, past life regression sessions, with a trusted hypnotherapist, neurolinguistic reprogrammer in order to help me process through that trauma. And I think what happens is a lot of people on Earth that are star seeds that maybe had a connection with Lyra feel that, oh, I can never go home again. My home
Mhm.
doesn't exist. You know,
Yeah.
um, or they have this feeling like, oh, I feel like an orphan, or I feel like I'm just adopted, or, I'm just kind of visiting, or,
Mhm.
so they don't have this sense of really feeling like they belong or they feel at home. And this can be really disconcerting for people, or, when they're first starting to awaken, it's just
Yeah.
kind of like, what do I do with these feelings? I don't feel like I connect with anything. I feel lost, or I feel like I don't know what direction to take. Um, so in those instances, it is good to talk to other star seeds or join some meetup groups or have a reading or do something that can help people put these pieces together. Like, why do I feel this way? Why do I feel so different from everybody else? So I think a lot of us Starseed go through that, you know, that, that experience.
Yeah, and I was just wondering if that come somewhat replayed itself and is now in the karma or the trauma of Earth humans, like with the fall of Atlantis.
Oh, totally. Yeah,
It was
totally.
somewhat a
I think
similar
it's
story.
kind of like waves of
Yeah,
experiences that we've chosen on a higher level to replay so that we can make different choices here on Earth,
yeah,
So maybe in Lyra, we didn't get a chance to, we didn't have any choices. Maybe we just got killed
yeah,
or we just got, swept up in a refugee ship, and we never really processed that trauma. But going through similar things here on Earth allows us the opportunity to make different choices, to empower ourselves, to become
yeah.
a master at the game, if you want to call it that.
And I think just when I think about these times and the intensification and the quickening, I
Hmm.
I struggle with anger myself because I say,
Yeah.
how in the world could I belong here? It's crazy. I don't feel connected to anything. It's just there's chaos like in the etheric and the dream time.
Hmm.
All the work going on is so intense, and it's like it feels like one of these kind of emergency rescue missions, but I'm trying to figure that, okay, I must be resonant with this story if
Hmm.
I'm here. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I can't just be a saint, right?
Oh,
For
no, no.
some
I
of
mean,
us
I think,
starseeds, like, yeah,
yeah. I think, there's this misconception, especially online and social media and just online in general, that all star seeds are of the light. We all, are like, these do-gooders, we're light workers, we're here to do our thing
yeah.
and then we never make mistakes. And that is so far from the truth. I mean, I think a lot of us have made a lot of mistakes and it's just part of the process. We've chosen to be here so we can make those mistakes and see okay, how do I evolve from this? Because when we're in the higher realms, like let's say we're having a lifetime in the Pleiades or a lifetime in Sirius or Arcturus, we're not going to have the opportunity to go through these experiences because these are higher dimensional realities. I mean, these are perfect civilizations. It's everything is very evolved, so. I think for a lot of us star seeds, we wanted to be, to volunteer here on Earth. A lot of us, I'll say the vast majority of us have actually chosen to be here
But you don't,
because,
yeah,
yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, just to finish it off,
Yeah.
that it gives us an opportunity to evolve at a much more rapid rate when we can experience adversity,
Hmm.
so yeah.
So do you resonate with the idea that, okay, this kind of simplistic idea where I can do my time, raise my vibration, ascend, and then I never have to incarnate in a human body again? Or do you just think you still always can?
I
Like
think you
sort of the
always
traditional
can.
idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like when you would think of ascended masters that,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. I think it depends on the individual and what they choose. We're all free will beings,
mhm,
so I don't subscribe to the idea that we have to play out this, constant reincarnation cycle, where we're stuck here on Earth for the duration of Earth time. I mean, I believe that a lot of the star seeds have chosen to be here and that we can also choose to end our contracts with Earth.
yeah.
So we do have planetary contracts, so we make a contract that I'm going to have X amount of lifetimes here, or I'm going to do this. But we also can change those contracts if we want to,
But
so we can just say, you know what? I've accomplished what I've chosen to accomplish here, and I choose not to come back, or I love this planet so much that I want to see it do well in the future. So when Earth ascends, I want to continue incarnating in fifth dimensional Earth. So we can also have that choice, so I think it's more of an individual choice on a higher soul level, if that answers your question.
yeah, I think it's just why does it have to be so much suffering? Like why does it have to be so miserable? You
Yeah,
know,
I
and
know.
and
I struggle with that too,
yeah.
honestly. I every single day I ask myself.
Yeah.
And then I always ask my guides like, am I done yet? Can I check out? Nope.
Yeah.
Still got,
But
still got
you
stuff.
you keep putting yourself out there and you keep putting your voice out there, and I really appreciate that. I know many others do because it's not easy for you. Like it just sounds like your temperament and you're sensitive, and but you do push yourself just so people can hear you, and I really appreciate that.
Thank
Um,
you. Yeah,
yeah,
no, I'm an INFJ. I'm a very,
yeah,
very much an introvert,
hmm
and I really have to psych myself into doing a podcast or doing a show or a presentation. I mean, I'm not like a natural at it. So, but I'm so devoted to this mission that when my guides told me I was going to be a public figure, I didn't believe them at first. And I said, hell no, no way. And then, now I'm a public figure, but
yeah,
it's not like my natural inclination to do that. So yeah,
yeah,
I'm glad that you picked up on that.
yeah. I can because you're just sparking another, and many people can take from you what you're saying, like. If you're focused on your mission, your heart, and what you're putting out, and just even that small percentage of people that will hear you and say, "Oh my God, you've like sparked this in me," that's a miracle, really,
Hmm.
because some people, the star seeds especially, go their whole life and they're just like, I'm crazy. No one gets me. I'm just a weirdo.
Hmm.
There's so much in the inner world. So yeah, that's a funny paradox how you have a lot of love to share, it seems,
Hmm.
but you're shy and because it's all so intense. Um,
And then you're talking about weird stuff that, blows people's minds,
yeah,
so it just draws even more negative attention. I get a
yeah,
lot of trolls and a lot of people put me down, and at
yeah.
first I was used to hurt my feelings, now I think I've gotten a little used to it. It's not as
Well,
bad.
yeah, and I'll just say it again, like you really helped me. Like you're like, I'm like, wow, okay, she's doing it, so I can do it. And I know you do
Oh,
that
totally.
for many
Anybody can.
people. So that's yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like lighting that flame. So
Yeah, no, I think I believe that if you have a passion for something, and I believe that a lot of us we've had blocked throat chakras for so long that now that we're lining up our chakras, our chakras are opening up, particularly the throat chakra, and we all have our truth to share and our
mhm.
stories, and we should go out there and do that. So I have to commend you for having a podcast.
Yeah,
It's not an easy thing to do. I used to have a podcast back in 2017 with a little network called Galactic U. It was based out
okay,
of Colorado, but it's
yeah,
not an easy thing to do a podcast. It's a lot of
no,
people think, oh, you just go online and talk, and no, you have to plan
yeah,
it out, and so kudos to you for doing your
yeah.
thing.
Thanks. Yeah, it's good because I know, you know, I can put you can put yourself out there as imperfect as you are,
Yeah.
and someone can just hear, wow, I hear myself in another and I'm feel emboldened. Um, but there was a bunch of things I wanted to touch on, and I know you've covered a lot of in your work, like Pleiadian, Sirian, Lyran,
Hmm.
starseeds, all that. There was one that you covered in your webinar, the Dal starseed, and then the Aldebaran.
Hmm.
I had never heard them, and it just randomly resonated with me. But maybe
Mm.
you could give a rundown of each, because I just am
Yeah.
curious for the listeners too.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of star systems out there that aren't as, I guess, well known as the Pleiadians or the Arcturians, So whenever I can, I try to share, just what, these are just information I picked up from the Akashic Records, So if you're to go out there and search for doll universe, probably not going to find a whole lot out there, So this is all information that I had to download from the records. And I kind of happened upon the doll people by accident because I noticed that occasionally I would do readings for, I mean, I would say just a handful of people, um, but I wasn't really pinpointing them from this universe. I kept seeing this other universe, So I was like, what the heck is this other universe? And it was a counterpart universe to our universe. So it was somehow connected to our universe. So the doll universe is the counterpart to our universe.
How do you, is there another way to phrase that? Because I feel like it's a bit hard to picture it
So they're
in
kind of like the flip side of our universe. So just to
like,
give you an example, if this kind of gives you a good image, like in their universe, empty space is white. and the stars are dark. So
Okay.
so in our universe, it's everything's dark and the stars are bright. In their universe, everything is light and the stars are dark. But other than that, they are humanoid beings, so the doll people were these Nordic type looking beings. So, if you were to look at them, you'd be like, wow, they look kind of tall and Nordic, and they were very light skinned, almost white, like almost like tall whites, but um and they were space explorers, so they would traverse, their universe, in their very advanced starships. Their starships were deceptively simple looking, so they weren't like super sophisticated, So I think a lot of times when if people were to see a dull starship, they would think, wow, that looks like just a blob, floating through space, but their ships were highly advanced, so these people, a group of them somehow went through this strange portal where they ended up in our universe. And for some reason, they couldn't find their way back home. And so I think they contacted the galactic councils that were in Galactic Center asking for assistance. And I think at some point they just decided, we don't know how to get you back home, so you guys can settle in Aldebaran. So Aldebaran is a one of the four royal stars. It's actually the biggest star in Taurus constellation. So these doll people just settled in the planets of Aldebaran, and then during the Lyran Wars, some of the Lyran refugees found themselves heading towards the Taurus constellation, and most of them went to the Pleiades, but some of them settled in Aldebaran, and some of them settled in the Hyades, which is that group of stars where Aldebaran's kind of in the middle of. But um, so there was civilizations that were starting there. And because the doll people were advanced and they were, spiritual people, they welcomed the Lyrans, so they started intermixing and marrying, and that's what created the Aldebaran race. So the Aldebaran people were space explorers. They were highly technical. They were spiritual as well, but they kind of have this protector, this really strong protector energy. Like they're kind of like spiritual warriors, so I don't know, maybe you were a soul that originated from Lyra, but you ended up in Aldebaran, so maybe that's why it resonates with you so much. And so they were kind of an interesting mix of two very different civilizations, where the Aldebaran people, I mean, the doll people were very stoic, very like to themselves, they were very minimalist, and the Lyrans were creative, they were expressive, they were emotional. So
Yeah.
these were two people that intermixed and married, so they kind of created a very unique civilization, and this was a civilization that I think had influence on some of the Germanic people. So I see a lot of people with German heritage that connect with Aldebaran and the Hyades. So when they were visiting Earth, they created colonies on planet Earth. So here on Earth, pretty much most of us Earth humans, we're kind of a hodgepodge of different alien genetics. That's how I see it.
Yeah.
Um, so there's some of us that might carry those genetics. Maybe you do. I don't know, but I do notice. I recently was part of a conference in Germany, and I did a presentation on the Aldebaran and the Hyadian people, and it was really interesting how many people after I gave that presentation came up to me and they said, you know what? My grandfather was a German immigrant, and I never knew what I connected with, and now I feel connection. I feel connection with these races,
Mm.
So So that's why I share this information because it just gives us more of those puzzle pieces of who we are, as a species
Yeah.
and as souls.
Yeah, because I guess we're all kind of a lot of different things. Like
We're
we've
a
been
lot of different
in a
things.
lot
Yeah.
of different civilizations and
Yeah.
stars. And I just remember when I first awakened, it was all so much because when that galactic aspect comes online, you're like, wait, I don't, it used to be that I just had to master this life and, you think you just die and get to go to heaven and whatever, but you're like, man, this is like a lot to juggle.
Hmm.
All these lifetimes, all these planets, what's my home planet? Where am I going? Like,
Hmm.
because you're really accountable across all time and dimensions and eternity.
Hmm.
Time as a construct, whatever it really is, I don't,
Hmm.
eternity, we're just doing a lot of stuff and we gotta,
Yeah.
it's
that,
kind of
that we're all
daunting.
multidimensional souls,
Yeah.
so some of us may be having parallel lifetimes in other dimensions, so
Yeah.
there's that as well, so it gets really complicated. So
Like
it's
what,
not just looking at the past, it's also looking from a multidimensional point of, well, maybe there's an aspect of me here and there's an aspect of me there. And I do believe that when we're dreaming, sometimes we might have dreams where we're in this reality that looks a little familiar, but it's not really our current reality, then I think we are visiting those
yeah.
alternate aspects of
But do you
ourselves.
think when you watch those near-death experiences of people and they say they wake up in this amazing place and they see other loved ones, is that like for people at a certain level of consciousness? Like if you're at a higher level of consciousness, do you kind of zoom to a different octave of heaven? Do you kind of go back to your star home right away?
I think it's
It's
different for different people. Like, I do think sometimes I think this reality that they think they're in, that they think is heaven, might actually be Arcturus, because Arcturus is the gateway of souls. So souls actually get processed in Arcturus after death. So it's kind of like Arcturus is kind of like that in between incarnation state where souls are kind of going through their life review. They're, assessing what happened in the previous life, and then they're making new goals for the next life. So, and sometimes, I think sometimes these angels that people are seeing might actually be extraterrestrial. They might be these. I know that's going to sound sacrilegious to some people, uh, but I do believe that sometimes these higher dimensional beings, they look so angelic because their vibrations are so high. And they might be creating, just their higher self is creating some higher dimensional construct where they can process and access a higher dimensional aspect of themselves. And they've created this themselves. So they do see loved ones, or they see, various individuals, or, their guides or whatever. So I think it just depends on the individual. Because I know quite a few people. I've done readings for people that have done, gone through near-death experiences, and each experience is very personal to that person. It's not
Mhm.
like they're all the same, so
How do you I'll ask a personal question, but
yeah.
I think people that listen will relate.
Yeah.
How do you deal with like when I have that feeling, I'm just sitting, going about life,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like a billion light years away and like
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, wait, is this real? This isn't really real. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is a dumb game. I don't want to play this game anymore because
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I have a lot of love to give, but this is like a prison.
Mm.
And I can give all the love in the world, but I feel like a lot of people can't hear it. So then I have to become like a distorted, broken, twisted plant, and I feel invisible. I
Mm.
feel totally invisible and resentful because, all right, I can do all the service in the world, whatever, but I also feel like it's just kind of brutal when you don't have people to like see you because you feel like you're seeing people, you're appreciating people, you're tuning in with
Mhm.
their hearts. You're just like, when do I get some like, I feel like it's not reciprocated, you know? So
Mm.
like,
I felt like
I,
that for a
yeah,
long time,
yeah.
honestly. I can relate to what you're saying. where I felt like, why am I always invisible or why don't people see me? And honestly, I think part of that is because we do vibrate at a higher rate. So a lot of normies don't notice us. I mean, I know that sounds
Yeah.
really crazy, but
Like
I'm just
literally
going to give
not
an
even see.
example.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to
Yeah.
give an example that I think hopefully will illustrate what I'm talking about. So when I was working my 3D job, we had a lot of in-office meetings. Nobody loves meetings. We hate meetings. I
Mhm.
especially hate meetings. But I noticed that once I became awakened, I would go to these meetings and I would be accused of not being there. I mean, even though I would sign in and I'll be sitting there with everybody, um, I would have my managers accuse me of not being at the meeting. And I said, yes, I was. Here's my name. I signed in. I mean, so that's kind of part of what we're experiencing, I think, is that we're seeing more of this separation between those of us that are ascending and we are moving towards the fourth and fifth dimensions, and those that are what definitely part of the 3D. So the other thing we have to keep in mind too is that there's a lot of artificial souls. I don't even know if I want to call it souls, but artificial beings in the 3D that aren't really real. It's almost like, those characters in, the games, the online, internet games, or, where, um, this will, make sense for gamers, but, like, you're playing this character and you're encountering all these beings in this different, artificial construct reality that aren't really real. They're just kind of in the backdrop, so
Non-player character,
like a
NPC.
character. Yeah.
Like the term NPC, non-player character.
Yeah,
People
non-player
use that a
yeah, I
lot.
always
Yeah.
forget but that's what
Yeah.
exactly what it
Yeah.
is. And it's kind of like we're in a human avatar suit. So we're in this kind of meat suit, So this isn't really who we are. We're just kind of playing this earth role, So we're going through this reality that's, really not a very high vibrational reality.
But
But
sorry, does that
yeah,
mean
go
that
ahead. Go ahead.
they
Yeah.
literally do not have a soul, or there's just less love in them?
No, some of them don't
Like
have a soul. I mean, some of them are not real. I
it's
know
it's like hard to
I'm not
wrap
the
my
only
head
person
around.
that talks about this. I know Dolores
Yeah.
Cannon talks about it, and
Yeah. No, I know. No, I've heard it
yeah,
a lot. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I've noticed that too, and sometimes you see glitches in our reality where things are like, okay, things don't look real. They look kind of weird.
So it's like they're literally operating off the code of the Matrix,
Exactly. Yeah. I
like
do
a
think
video
the
game.
Matrix movies was a documentary. I mean,
Yeah. Did you think
I
the
don't,
Truman Show was a documentary?
I think that was a documentary too. I
Yeah, I
mean,
love both those movies. I love, yeah,
I love them too. Even when I watched them back in the 90s, I was just like,
yeah,
wow, this is
very
some deep
accurate.
stuff.
Spot
Yeah.
on. Yeah, really. They're
Yeah.
just giving you the manual there.
Yeah, they are,
Um,
kind of in the guise of entertainment, but yeah.
yeah,
But yeah, a lot of these beings, like, you might have neighbors that, I mean, I gotta be honest, I don't interact with most of my neighbors. It's like, I don't even see them, It's just like,
yeah.
you know what I'm saying? It's just weird,
It's like, yeah, if we're not on the same radio station, they're there,
Exactly.
but they're not really there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can
So I think
we,
that's what's happening with a lot of star seeds is that they feel so alone because they're like this real soul in this artificial reality,
yeah, it,
and they're
it
looking
bring,
for other real souls to connect with, So
yeah,
yeah, it's kind of a hard thing to put your mind around, but once you get into that, it starts making sense. It's like, oh,
yeah,
okay, I'm not going crazy.
yeah.
Yeah,
I can't tell you how much joy that brings so much joy to my heart just to hear you say those words, because that's like a lifelong struggle. And I'm sure people listening will feel similar because you're just saying it blunt and flat out because it's true. And
it's
like
true.
people are like, well, we want to be saintly and we want to be nicey nice and we want to be respecting everyone, but it's like, eh,
You know
there's
what
a,
I had to figure out was, how to get is to create my own 5D reality.
yeah,
That's the key to getting out of the matrix is choosing to step out of it, first of all. Maybe that means you have to quit your job or quit your shitty marriage, or I mean, I'm not telling people to get divorced and, quit their jobs. It has to be a personal choice, but whatever it takes for you to do that and create your own, heaven,
yeah.
create your own
Well,
reality.
that's why I really do feel like even this meeting today, me meeting you and feeling pulled to email you, and like I do really feel like there's a stronger magnetism for souls now.
Hmm. Oh yeah,
Like
star seeds are starting to come
our
together.
soul family, like even me, and I can be really shy, I can be really stubborn, really grumpy. So that like that's saying something that I'm even, all right, let's get out, let's do something. I'm gonna put myself out there, and you know, nothing's gonna stop us because I'm just sick of this. Like we got to do something. We have the power. We've been through the
We're stronger
experience.
together is what,
Yeah,
so I always encourage my clients, even though you
yeah,
might be a shy person or you don't think you have the money or whatever, go to these conferences, go to these trainings, go to these workshops. That's where you're going to meet, like-minded people.
yeah. And let
Now I
people,
feel like I have this whole family of star seeds, like I don't feel alone at
yeah.
all anymore. I feel like, you know, um, even during times where I feel kind of like, oh, I feel isolated, um, I still know there's a beautiful, just web of star seeds out there that are also like me that, that are doing on the path, they're doing the same thing.
Well,
And
yeah,
that's why I feel so blessed to be doing the work that I do because I get to connect with so many beautiful people. And go ahead.
and it seems that like that those really rough and traumatic and all the work you had to do, them bringing you back online, those
Hmm.
crazy fast upgrades, it's like it was just on time, really. And
Oh,
they
it
were
was
bringing you
perfect
back
timing.
home, bringing your
Yeah.
family, bringing your gifts, all that. And it's like,
Hmm.
wow, thank God, like Star Family for guiding me coming into this nasty hell realm, it seems sometimes.
Yeah, like I call it the seven layers of Hades,
Yeah, that's funny.
We're just
Um,
trying to climb out of there, just like Dante and
yeah,
Divine Comedy. He's
but we
climbing out of
can,
hell.
but we can do it, and people
Oh,
see people
totally.
like you and they're like, man, I can make it out of my hell and my issues. But I want to make the most of the time, but I figured we could maybe, could you guide us into the records and do like a little snapshot maybe? Or do
Yeah,
you
I'll
still
just
feel
do one
comfortable doing that?
on kind of the current consciousness,
Yeah.
maybe see
Because
what's going on.
there's an
Yeah,
opening prayer.
yeah, I'll do the
I've
whole
seen, yeah, and
process.
all that.
Yeah,
Yeah. Because it could give people an idea of what you do and just, we can tune in there. Yeah.
yeah. Let's do that. And then we'll kind of wrap it up at that. So,
Yeah, definitely. Okay.
yeah. Okay. Only the highest vibrations of love and light can be in the space and all objects in the space for the highest good of the consciousness of humanity and myself for this reading today. All other energies must leave now. I call in the highest level of the divine that knows that love is the power and the truth from which we read, the highest level guides and angels of the consciousness of humanity and myself to help us with this reading. Archangel Michael, hold this space for us, and so it is. And so we do acknowledge the forces of light, asking for guidance, direction, and courage to know the truth, as it is revealed for our highest good and the highest good of everyone connected to us. O Holy Spirit of God, help me to know the consciousness of Earth humanity in the light of the Akashic Records, to see the consciousness of Earth humanity through the eyes of the Lords of the Records, and enable me to share the wisdom and compassion that the Masters, teachers, and loved ones have for the consciousness of Earth humanity. Okay, the records are now open. Let's see what comes through. So, what the Akashic guides are showing me at this point is that they're saying that the time of separation and the time of feeling isolated is coming to an end. That even with this current wave of change, just currently what's going on with the elections, what's going on, in our, false reincarnation matrix, construct matrix being, that we're all kind of stuck into right now, that it's enabling us to rapidly, it's almost like they're showing me the energies kind of like a slurry, like a mud slurry, that things seem really kind of dark and heavy and dense. But it's actually that more and more light energy is coming into the slurry and everything is being processed out. And basically, what's happening is we're going through massive, massive clearing and evolution at this point where there's going to be uh, rapid changes throughout our current reality, where it's already currently happening, where the sun is getting brighter, the colors are sharper and more brilliant, that our realities are shifting and changing, and we're all also energetically, through our DNA, we're also getting energetically shifted, with the influx of this light frequency. It's going to feel kind of like a little bit of a birth, like we're going through this midwifery stage of going through this birth where things seem kind of heavy and dark. And then we're coming out of that tunnel into the lightness of the new age. So with that being said, star seeds are now starting to find each other. We are seeing other members of our soul family. What we're seeing is that we are coming into the new age, where people are, even if they feel like, oh, I don't know who I am, or I don't know what I'm doing here, those answers are coming to them, and they don't necessarily have to come to somebody like me or another practitioner. They can download that information for themselves or connect with their own star families. It's going to be happening more and more. I've seen it with my clients, actually, so I know it's happening out there. And as we start becoming online with who we truly are and shed the earth avatar, as I call it, we are going to be shifting and creating this new earth. And it's going to be kind of a group effort. So not just one person. So it's not like a president is going to shift things for us, or this personality is going to shift things for us. Even the spiritual teacher, it's going to be all of us together. And through that, we're going to start to see things shifting and changing, even within the 3D. There is no longer going to be a 3D after a few years. So what I keep seeing in the records is that we're going to have first contact with extraterrestrial beings, with our extraterrestrial families at the end of this decade and early next decade. I've been saying that for years. I still see this timeline. And once that happens, we are going to step into the new golden age. And yes, the ride's going to be a little bumpy in the next few years getting there, but once we get there, it's going to be just amazing. New technologies are going to come online. People are going to feel more connected. We're going to be shifting into love consciousness. And I know this sounds kind of Pollyanna-ish, where it seems like too good to be true, but and I do think, we are on our own evolutionary paths, but we are going to start joining together. And with that, together we're going to create create this new earth, this new reality. And like I said, the Arcturians showed me this when I was on board the ship, and I do want to come back to that, where uh, Earth is going to look very different. It's not going to be massive buildings, a lot of roads and structures. We're going to return to living with the environment, integrating with the environment, utilizing higher level technologies such as free energy and med beds and growing our own food and just going back to the original human template. So for those of your listeners that maybe don't have a lot of hope, think things are going to be status quo, I'm just sharing a little glimpse into a potential future, a potential timeline that I do believe that we are moving towards. But it's going to be a group effort. So with that, I'm going to close the records. So let me go ahead and do a closing prayer. So I'd like to thank the masters, teachers, and loved ones for their love and compassion. I would like to thank the lords of the Akashic Records for their point of view, and I would like to thank the Holy Spirit of Light for all knowledge and healing. The records are now closed. Amen. The records are now closed. Amen. The records are now closed. Amen.
Amen.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for doing that.
No worries.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Um,
always get excited when I see the future of Earth. Because a lot of people think it's going to be death and destruction and Armageddon, and I don't see it that way. I see a lot of things getting a lot better. And I know there's other people out there, like including my husband and other star seeds, that are seeing the same reality, seeing things
yeah.
progressively getting better. So
And I think the more we believe it and know it in our souls,
we're creating it.
we're choosing it. Yeah. At the higher level
Yeah.
against all odds,
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So, um, well, thank you so much for being on, Debbie. I really appreciate it. And I wish I could talk to you longer and just keep picking your brain.
Well,
But
maybe you'll have me back
maybe
for
another
another
time.
show.
Yeah, another time, certainly.
Yeah.
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 Um, so so thank you. Yeah. And thank you for
Thank you for having me
lighting the
on. And
way.
it was a great
Yeah.
conversation and, very insightful questions. And thank you.
Yeah. And people can find you on YouTube and also Gaia TV and
Yeah, I'm
DebbieSolaris.com.
kind of everywhere.
Yeah, so they can
Except
find you.
TikTok. I refuse to do TikTok. I think it's
Yeah.
evil. But
Yeah.
yeah, I do. I'm on social media such as Instagram.
Instagram. Yeah.
I'm on Instagram, on Facebook, I'm on YouTube. I have my own website, so it's debbiesolaris.com, if you want to, take that relationship course or
Oh
some of
yeah.
my other courses. And we do offer a yearly Galactic Akashic Reader course. It's an 8-week long course, very immersive. You get certified in how to read the records like I do, so
Okay.
and then if you want to see me in person, I will be at Conscious Life Expo in LA next year. So
All right. Well, thank you so much, Debbie.
thank you. All
Have a good
right. Take
night.
care,
All right.
everybody.
All right.